We are here talking about confirmations in this video. So confirmations are what we use to test the account balances, right, or do the substantive testing for accounts receivable. So this is important. If accounts receivable are material, there's a very high possibility they could be misstated a little bit, and we have to make sure we're getting that checked out. So we already talked about what they are. So let's talk a little bit about specific confirmations. All right. So if you remember audit risk model, right? We want to keep audit risk low. We want to make sure we get that audit outcome right. We don't say they're misstated when they're not misstated when actually they are. We understand the inherent risk and the control risk, so we know what the risk of material misstatement is. So with these confirmations, we have to think about, is the risk of material misstatement high or low? And I'm going to adjust my detection risk accordingly. So confirmations are a type of audit procedure. That's their nature. They're a confirmation with a client's customers, right? So that might be a better substantive test than doing an analytical procedure, right? I'm going to really truly confirm what that balance is, right? So that's changing the nature. Instead of just doing an analytical procedure, I do a confirmation. So I've changed the nature of my test, right? So if I think the risk is high, if I think risk of material misstatement is high, I want my detection risk to be low. Instead of doing just analytical procedures, I do confirmations. So I've changed the nature. The extent, how many I do. Do I just do a couple of confirmations? Or do I do a bunch, right? And the timing, at the end of the year when I'm testing the exact balance or during interim, and I can roll that forward, right? So confirmations all relate to our audit risk model, just like everything else we do does. So there's a couple different kinds of confirmations: positive, negative, and blank. And again, that relates to the nature of the test you're doing, right? So the riskier the risk of material misstatement, and I think they've overstated their receivables. I think they're wrong. Well, I want to do better tests, right? I change the nature. So instead of doing analytical, I do confirmation. That's a better test. Instead of doing negative confirmations, I do blank confirmations. Instead of doing positive, I do blank. So there's some of these confirmations are better than others, I guess I would say. A positive confirmation I might use if I feel it's pretty risky. In other words, that I think people will just kind of check the box. Yeah, I owe that, and not check it very well. So a positive confirmation is where I make them respond positively and send an actual response. In other words, I say, hey, do you owe $1 million? And if they actually do, I want them to say, yes, I do owe that. So like there's a little yes, owe, send back. Negative confirmation, I really don't expect them to send a response unless there's something wrong. So my confirmation letter would then read something like, hey, they say you owe $1 million. If that's right, don't do anything. But if it's wrong, send this back with the right balance, right? So you can see it's not as good a test, right? Because there's also that possibility somebody will get that letter and not fill it out, and I would think, oh, I guess it was right. So that's the difference with a negative confirmation. A blank confirmation is where I don't send them any amount. I just say, hey, you're a customer of my client. How much do you owe them? And they fill in the blank, right? So obviously blank confirmations would be the best. Positive confirmations next best, and negative confirmations the least best. So that's changing the nature of your test. So you would ordinarily always do this for an audit. It's kind of required under the standards. The only time you wouldn't do confirmations is if they're not material. The risk of misstatement is very, very low, right? It's I can figure it out using analytical procedures. It matches, it's perfect, I don't care. Or you just don't think it'll work. You know, we sent out confirmations last year, nobody returned them. These clients just don't do it. So typically you will always send out confirmations. You will send out confirmations unless they're not material. All right? And the logistics of sending them is important, right? So as you send, kind of assume you send them by mail or email. If you send them by mail and you get something that can't be delivered right, these account receivables are supposed to be your client's customers, and you're using the client's data to mail a letter. Well, if you get one back that says no such address, no such person, whatever, then something's bad wrong, because that's supposed to be a client of your customer. So maybe it's a fake receivable. So you need to look into that. Positive and blank confirmations are better than negative. You know, with negative confirmations, you just don't know if they just didn't answer it, right? You do have to understand that when you send a confirmation, if you don't send a blank one and you send out a confirmation that says, my client says you owe them $1 million and they really owe $2 million, they're not going to say, oh no, I owe way more than that. So that's going to happen. And you have to be careful that the response came from the right person, that, you know, there have been instances where clients intercept them or mail them or get them in the mail, so you have to be careful and make sure that things are right. So if you have a fake customer, you may be sending it to a fake address, but somebody may be intercepting it. If you get non-responses on a positive or blank, you're supposed to get a response. If you don't get a response, you need to follow up. If people aren't responding, it could be because they're fake. Look into that and go to alternative procedures. Alternative procedures might be like, okay, if this was due on December 15th, they should have paid it sometime before January 15th. Did they actually pay it? You can just go look and see if they paid it. If they paid it on January 15th, they probably owed it on December 15th, right? So there's other things you can do. Negative confirmations, just they're limited. But, you know, it may be okay depending on how big of a risk you felt like there is. But when you get exceptions, something weird, things getting returned in the mail, a lot of customers of your clients saying, no, I don't owe that much, you need to follow up. Here's an example of a trial balance. This will give you an idea of who to send confirmations to. You may not want to send it to everybody, but things that are past 30 days you may want to. Very, very large accounts, right? So if a specific receivable is not very large, don't confirm it. Confirm all the ones. Certainly confirm them if they're material, right? If you have a very large client, confirm that. So use your receivable trial balance to say, okay, I want to send things to these past due people. I want to send things to these very, very large ones. So this is a good way to look. So here's just an example of a positive confirmation letter. And you send out, please look at this data, look at it and tell me if it's correct. It's telling you, here's a balance. Please tell me if it's correct or not, right? Even if it's correct, I want to hear back from you. That's what we call positive. Here's a negative, all right? And so it's like, if this number's right, you don't have to do anything. Don't write us back, don't tell us. Only if this number's wrong, then let us know. All right? Now, here's some things you might get, right? And what should you do? If they tell you it's paid, that's great. You know, you're not asking that. You're just asking, was this your balance on this and such a date? And they may respond with, well, I paid that. Thinking it's a bill or something. And that's great. Then you know it's valid. We're unable to confirm. Okay, well, maybe that's a non-response, so you need to check into that more. We return these items. Okay, that's an exception, right? Because if they return something, they don't know that balance, so you need to look that over. If they say something that we received the goods, that's great. That probably means it's a valid account receivable, because then it's right, it's been shipped, your client fulfilled its dues, but you should look at the date. If the shipment was made in December, you're good if it's a December receivable, but if it was shipped on January 1st, maybe not. But check your cutoff if you get something right around the cutoff date. So when we come back, we're going to talk about a few more procedures, and that'll be the last video for Chapter 7.